Hello, friends of APBA Golf and friends of APBA. Dr. TC here from Lysippus, PA. I promise to demonstrate the procedures from the 2010-2014 APBA golf game regarding short shots or short approaches near the green. So let's get this a little closer. We can do better than that. That's good. Let's start with the yellow position. And this is player one. This will be Mr. Palmer again. He's hit his shot a little bit long on this 13th at APBA National, the par 4, 481, the same hole we've been using. Well, Mr. Palmer in this position and from this yellow spot is on the same side of the center line as pins 3, 4, 2, and 6. So he is what we call short-sighted, which is the same thing as having a bad angle. That's a language that the analysts use to describe positions where there's just not very much green between the pin and the edge of the green. There's just not much room there, so it's a difficult shot. In prior APBA games, going back to the 60s, we always had to go along the center line. There was no choice. Well, we have to use the center line on these short-sighted shots as well because that's a penalty for getting in that bad position. And I'll demonstrate that for these pins, 2, 3, 4, and 6. On the other hand, you can see Mr. Palmer is on the opposite side of the center line as pins 1 and 5. So he has good angles or good access to pins 1 and 5, and we'll demonstrate that as well. All right, well, let's take a look first at pins 3 and 4. They're the most treacherous. There's no room. It takes him about 5 squares if he were able to go right at it, and then only 1 square to roll it out. My colleagues have asked me for definitions of short-sighted or bad angles around the green, and I've given some. And one of those definitions is just simply that you have less distance from the edge of the green to the pin than from the edge of the green to your shot. That's one of the ways to look at it. And that's usually how analysts look at it. So golfers, unless it's extremely wet, professional golfers will hit away from that a little bit. They don't want to leave it short and have yet another treacherous shot. We've seen this in the Ryder Cup. We won't name names. We've seen it at the Masters. We've seen it at the British Open. And it's not only embarrassing but difficult. Professional golfers are conservative. They're playing for money. So that's how we're going to simulate. We're going to make you go back to the center line when you are on the same side of the center line as these pins. Well, let's see how it works for 3, 4, 2, and 6. We'll do 3 first. Let's think of our position here as getting back to the center line and then moving along the center line. So we're going to mark this position 5, 10, 15 yards. Now, the rules state that if you are closer to the pin than you are to the center line, then basically you got to count the longer distance. It says count the full distance back here. Well, that makes sense, 5, 10, 15 yards, because there's only 5, 10 yards to get level with pin 3. So we're going to count the full 15, and then the 10 here don't count as anything, do they? Because we know that at least one of these angles is the 15-to-5 ratio where you only count 5 yards per 15. So it would be this one. So we're always going to count the longer distance, and then the shorter distance will be the one that we'll use to assess 5 yards for every 15 counted. So this is only a 15-yard shot, and we're going to be shooting to here. Okay, that's going to be tough because we're going to have to hope to get something that goes to the right because our angle that we're using is along the center line. We're not using diagonals in APBA golf. Again, we're maintaining the original grid system. And if folks want to use a different approach, a home brew with an angle, great. Whatever makes the game more enjoyable to you, please, I encourage that. I'm going to show an advanced and alternative way to handle short-sighted shots in a future video. But let's do it by the rules right now. Okay, we did 3. What about 4? Very similar. 15 yards to get to the center line. Only 5 yards along that center line. Count the full 15. The 5 counts as nothing. We have a 15-yard shot. 15 yards, that seems like a lot. It's only about 7 yards to get there. A diagonal would be what? The square root of 50, about 7.07. That's right. But we're probably shooting in real life about the 6, which is 7, and 7 is 14, and I only asked for 15. Not too bad. Pretty good for a board game. All right, what about 6? 15 yards along this south to north, because that's longer than the 10 to get to 6. It's another 15-yard shot. Well, gee, we're not as penalized as much being short-sighted to 6. Well, of course you're not. You shouldn't. You have a little bit more room to work with because that pin is closer to the center line. What about pin 2? Well, pin 2, let's be careful. We got 15 to get back, and we have 5, 10, 15, 20 along that. Common sense. Count the 20 full and count the 5 for the 15. The rules say if you're closer to the pin than the center line, count the full 15. Well, you're not closer to the pin than the center line. You're a little closer to the center line. So treat it as we have shots from the fairway. Okay, so 15 to 5 ratio, that's 5 yards to get back, 10, 15, 20, 25-yard shot to 2. We hope for something to the right because our angle of attack is west to east. Okay, perfect? Of course not. And I recall the words from my dad who did sports software. In fact, he did some work for the great Brian Aldrich from 4th Street Software. Before Dad died, I would go to him occasionally with my board game ideas, and he would say, Tom, if you want it to be perfect and you keep adding rules and you add procedures, you might as well just play a computer game. Well, I hate computer games. I won't look at screens all day. I want to play a board game. And my colleagues are playing a board game. So this is our solution in 2010 and 14. Those were the short-sighted shots. How about these shots to 5 and 1? He's on the opposite side of the center line as these pins are. So he has a good angle. How do we play that? We can aim just like when we were in the fairway. Let's do it this way. Let's go to 1 and let's treat each of these shots as a rectangle. So we're going to outline the corners of the rectangle real quickly. I'm going to go along parallel to the center line and perpendicular because we're going to try to go to 1. You can see that's a pretty easy shot. He's going to pitch it on the green and roll it to 1. Well, what angle is he going to take? Since we don't use diagonals in APBA golf, he's either going to have to go this way, right? Go along here, parallel to his position, and shoot to 1 this way, or he can go perpendicular to the center line and go this way. Which do you think is right? Well, this should look the best to you, and it is the correct because this is a shorter distance to get here, and then he's going to run it this way. If you absolutely wanted to do it from here, you could. It's your choice. Let's take a look at the yardage differences. I'll bet there aren't any. Okay, this is shorter, so we'll count 5, 10, 15. That's only worth 5. And then 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. 30-yard shot coming north to south. 30-yard shot coming north to south. What about this way? A little weird, but you could do it. You have a good angle. All right, this is longer. We got to count the whole thing then, don't we? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And then just 5 for that 15. It's a 30-yard shot. So it's going to be the same distance always and everywhere. Let's get rid of that one. That's silly. We're going to shoot it along this. No bunkers. We have a good angle, and we can go right at that pin if we want to. What about 5? Let's extend our rectangle, and that becomes real intuitive at some point. What choice would you make here? Well, 5, 10, 15, 20. That's a long way over here. 5, 10, 15, 20. That was 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, excuse me. So this one not only looks more realistic, it's a better angle. I don't want to hit over that bunker. I'm not even near that bunker. Get rid of 2. Okay, since this is shorter, 5, 10, 15, 20, it's only one complete 15-yard segment. That's 5 yards. 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So we have another 30-yard shot, and had we counted from this position, it also would have been 30.